Hi, Freedom One here. Today I would like to read some passages on forgiveness that I found in a golden treasure, and I hope you will give it a read. In The Hiding Place by Corrie Ten Boom, recounting the true story of how she went from rescuing, becoming an underground hub during the time of Nazi Germany, where she was saving souls, to being caught and going through kind of a hell on earth, and just some real treasures in understanding the depth of forgiveness. Corrie, do you remember the day we were arrested? A man came to the shop. You were sick and I had to wake you up. I remembered very well. Remembered the strange roving eyes, the uneasiness in the pit of my stomach. That was more than fever. Apparently everyone in Ermelo knew him. He worked with the Gestapo from the first day of occupation. He reported this woman's 2 brothers for resistance work, and finally herself and her husband too. When Ermelo had finally caught on to him, he had come to Haarlem and teamed up with Williams at Captain. His name was Jan Vogel. Flames of fire seemed to leap around that name in my heart. I thought of father's final hours, alone and confused in a hospital corridor, of the underground work so abruptly halted. I thought of Mary Atali, arrested while walking down a street, and I knew that if Jan Vogel stood in front of me now, I could kill him. Betsie drew the little cloth bag from beneath her overalls and held it out to me, but I shook my head. Betsie kept the Bible during the day, since she had more chance to read and teach from it here than I did at the Phillips Barracks. In the evenings, we held a clandestine prayer meeting for as many as could crowd around our bunk. You lead the prayers tonight, Betsie. I have a headache. More than a headache. All of me ached with the violence of my feelings about the man who had done us so much harm. That night I did not sleep, and the next day at my bench scarcely heard the conversation around me. By the end of the week I had worked myself into such a sickness of body and spirit that Mr. Moorman stopped at my bench to ask if something were wrong. Wrong? Yes, something's wrong. And I plunged into an account of that day. I was only too eager to tell Mr. Moorman and all Holland how Jan Vogel had betrayed his country. What puzzled me all this time was Betsie. She had suffered everything I had, and yet she seemed to carry no burden of rage. Betsie! I hissed one dark night when I knew that my restless tossing must be keeping her awake. 3 of us now shared this single cot as the crowded camp daily received new arrivals. Betsie, don't you feel anything about Jan Vogel? Doesn't it bother you? Oh yes, Corrie, terribly. I've felt for him ever since I knew, and pray for him whenever his name comes into my mind. How dreadfully he must be suffering. For a long time I lay silent in the huge, shadowy barracks, restless with the sighs, snores, and stirrings of hundreds of women. Once again I had the feeling that this sister with whom I had spent all my life belonged somehow to another order of beings. Wasn't she telling me in her gentle way that I was as guilty as Jan Vogel? Didn't he and I stand together before an all-seeing God, convicted of the same sin of murder? For I had murdered him with my heart and with my tongue. Lord Jesus, I whispered into the lumpy ticking of the bed, I forgive Jan Vogel, and I pray that you will forgive me. I have done him great damage. Bless him now and his family. That night, for the first time since our betrayer had a name, I slept deep and dreamlessly until the whistle summoned us to roll call. It was at a church service in Munich that I saw him, the former SS man who had stood guard at the shower room door in the processing center at Ravensbrück. He was the first of our actual jailers that I had seen since that time. And suddenly it was all there. The room full of mocking men, the heaps of clothing, Betsy's pain-blanched face. He came up to me as the church was emptying, beaming and bowing. "How grateful I am for your message, Fraulein," he said. "To think that, as you say, he has washed my sins away." His hand was thrust out to shake mine, and I, who had preached so often to the people in the Blomendal the need to forgive, kept my hand at my side. Even as the angry, vengeful thoughts boiled through me, I saw the sin of them. Jesus Christ had died for this man. Was I going to ask for more? "Lord Jesus," I prayed, "forgive me and help me to forgive him." I tried to smile. I struggled to raise my hand. I could not. I felt nothing, not the slightest spark of warmth or charity. And so again I breathed a silent prayer. "Jesus, I cannot forgive him. Give your forgiveness." As I took his hand, the most incredible thing happened. From my shoulder, along my arm, and through my hand, a current seemed to pass from me to him, while into my heart sprang a love for this stranger that almost overwhelmed me. And so I discovered that it is not on our forgiveness any more than on our goodness that the world's healing hinges, but on his. When he tells us to love our enemies, he gives, along with the command, the love itself.